Wynter Tai Chats 5 Ancestor Fist with Master Mark Wiley. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome back to Wynter Tai Chats, and just before we get into things, let's go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and definitely comment if you like things. So for today's chat, we're going to be speaking with a grandmaster of multiple styles of Kali and Arnis, such as Kabbalis, Serrata, Eskrima, and modern Arnis. But it is his mastery of No Cho Kun that is the subject of today's chat. A top student of Grandmaster Alex Lim Ko, he strives to share the true martial and health benefits that one can gain from the practice of a traditional martial art like 5 Ancestor Fist. Please welcome Master Mark Wiley. How are you doing today, sir?
Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for taking time out of this holiday night to actually speak with me and educate me about what this style is all about. So, without further ado, Master Mark, let's go ahead and take you straight into it with the first question. How do you start the martial arts, sir?
I got picked on in elementary school. Me and this other kid liked the same girl. And well, he was a lot bigger than me. And on the way to walking to home from school, he beat me up. And my mom said, "You're going to get enrolled in some kind of martial art to defend yourself." So she enrolled me in Taekwondo classes, 1979. And then I started wrestling right away that year. We had a gym coach in the elementary school who started me in wrestling and also with boxing. And that's where I got started. But the love of martial arts just grew from there, and I just branched out into so many styles. I loved it so much. I just saved my allowance from cleaning my room and doing chores in the house and washing dishes and then mowing the lawn. And then you can do more and more and go buy the martial art magazines, every month on the bookstore shelves. There were a bunch of them. And then that turned into me buying books and working at Asian World of Martial Arts in the mid 1980s and just being surrounded by Kung Fu theater and black belt theater twice on Saturday and Sunday. They had the Kung Fu movies from China coming in, or Hong Kong rather, from Golden Harvest and Shaw Brothers. And I just fell in love with it.
Awesome. So with a background starting off in Taekwondo and then going to wrestling and then eventually into boxing, how did you work your way into Kung Fu?
Well, I would say in 1982, I bought Danny Inosanto's book, Master Danny Inosanto's book called Filipino Martial Arts, as taught by Danny Inosanto. And in that book on Filipino martial arts, there were stories of different escrimadores in the back, or arnisadores in the back of the book. And there was one story in particular that I liked of a grandmaster named Angel Cabales and of the Serrata Eskrima. And he's holding a cigarette, he's sitting there, and he's got a big knuckle on his wrist, and he's little guy. And it's a story about him beating up a bunch of guys in Alaska. They were some kind of problem. He went outside, took a branch off a tree, carved off the things, made a stick, and went in and whooped their butts. And I thought, yeah, I'm doing that style. But we didn't have his particular style in the Philadelphia area where I grew up, in and around Philadelphia. But we had modern Arnis. So modern Arnis is the style of Remy Presas, who was the ambassador for our niece from the Philippines who took the art kind of to the West in a big way, whereas people like Angel Caballas had migrated to the U.S. and were living in the Filipino communities in Stockton, California, and had his school there. But Remy Presas was traveling around from city to city, going to all kinds of martial aikido clubs, kempo karate clubs, Shotokan clubs, teaching modern arnis. So I was able to get into modern arnis in the early to mid 80s, 83, I think, 84. And my teacher name's Joe Bridenstine. He also taught me Kempo karate, Ed Parker's Kempo. And he hosted Remy Presas in a lot for seminars and summer camps. And Remy stayed at his house quite a bit. So I got a lot of attention that way. But I was also studying with some other people. There was an old master in Philadelphia named Herminio Biñas from Negros Occidental, Philippines, which is the same island that Remy's from. And turns out he was one of Remy Presas's teachers. And who knew he retired here? I just saw him walking around one day, and I approached him, and turns out he was an Escrimador too, or Arnisador. Same thing, just different term. And so I started training with him privately in his home at the same time. And then finally, I somewhere between there, I end up studying Serrata Eskrima with a gentleman named Alan McLucky, and moved to Chicago to train more at this big martial arts academy in 1988, owned by Fred Degerberg, the Degerberg Academy. They had like 40 styles there. It's amazing. And seminars from everybody coming in. And Angel came out there and did a seminar, Angel Caballas, and he and I had a connection. He invited me out to Stockton, California, and I guess I was 19. I made my first trip out there and stayed with him for a few weeks and started training with him privately. And then over a period of a few years, went through his system with him, and then was named as one of his masters under him. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
from that start, from that humble start, I should say, with finding Angel Caballas, as you said, and up until now, you've gotten up to the grandmaster level. Is that correct? That is
Yeah. In his particular style, the grandmaster rank is there's an association, the World Caballas Eskrima Association, that gave a bunch of the masters or presented us with honorary grandmaster certificates, because Angel was really the only one who could do it, and he was the grandmaster of the art, but a lot of us have been doing it for 30, 40 years, so we got those. But I started going to the Philippines in I think 1993, around there, and making trips, 22 of them, to the Philippines to study with different masters and research with different masters. So like 30 or 40 masters. I wrote some books about it. And in 2013, when I went back in 2013, one of the grandmasters there, association, promoted me to 10th Dan, or grandmaster in Filipino martial arts. And then another grandmaster in the same year did the same in the Philippines. So then I have two associations there recognizing me through my 30, 40 years of training in that art as a grandmaster in the art, and developer of my own system called Integrated Eskrima, which integrates the methods of all my teachers. But it's not like a Jeet Kune Do thing. I'm not speaking ill of Jeet Kune Do. I'm just saying how it's different than Bruce Lee's approach. It's not just combining, quote unquote, what's best from each, because what's best is subjective, right? That's like what's best for a tall guy or lanky guy or a short guy or a guy who's good at grappling or one who's better at kicking. I mean, what's best is subjective to what your needs are and your capabilities. But the integrated Eskrima is based on a through line of principles and strategies that aren't to be violated. I created them by spending probably 3.5 years examining the arts of 17 masters. I have on video and photos and books and interviews with them. And I made poster boards of all their techniques by angle and defense and range, and what leg is forward when they do this and what leg is forward when they do that, and what angle are they on, because some of them are very good at certain techniques and not good at others against opponents or students who aren't cooperating. You know, a lot of students, they just strike and let the master do their thing, or they keep moving in a drill, but it's prearranged, right? So when I would move with them, I would always sneak, quote unquote, sneak something in or move out of sequence, because you want to see the reaction and learn from it. And I would do the same technique over and over on all of them, or series of techniques, and some would defend it and some would get hit. And I'd say, wow, how is that possible? Because they're all amazing. Not that they couldn't have beat me at the time. You know, we're just training, right? So of course they're letting me off the hook. But the fact that they weren't able to block this technique or that technique, which is just simple strikes in a combination, you know, this master could do it 100% of the time, this master 50% of the time, this one couldn't do it at all. You know, I started trying to examine, like, what is it about the art? And what I found out, what I came to realize, is that each of the defensive techniques we're taught have to fall into a specific range. They don't all work in every range, right? Makes you think, now, yeah, it makes sense when you say it, but nobody tells you when you're training, you know? And then also, that distance depends on what leg is forward. So if I do this block with the left leg forward, or if I do it with the right leg forward, certain hip and shoulder is forward, which means it's in range for the kind of attacks I was doing or counters, but it's not in range for the other guy. And so I found out by doing this that, gee, if I block like this and hit like that as my counter, the ones who are getting hit are the ones with the same leg forward. And the ones who aren't getting hit are the one with the opposite leg forward. So I started making notes, and I came out with a structure that says, in a perfect world, this is the best way: range, gate, foot in front, you know, your lead, and etc. works. That gives you the best opportunity not to be countered. And of course, you can make anything work at any time. You know, not every opponent is super amazing, but that's the end. So what I did was I drew that integration of range, technique, timing, footwork, distance into a system. And then that became the through line. So when I teach, for example, in Filipino martial arts, I don't teach like, okay, here's all your defenses against strike number 1. Here's all your defense against strike number 2, which like a lot of people do. Or, okay, you can do this block and you can do it on these 4 angles. So I don't teach by block either. I teach by range and footwork. So when all the techniques are named, they're named by the defense and the footwork together. So you're learning it properly together for the range that we're in. So I'll say lutang recta patapias. That means lutang is a floating backward step, which moves you from middle range to long range to middle range. So we haven't moved forward and we haven't stepped out and stayed there, right? And recta is a straight strike, and patapias is an angled hit and come back like a hack, right? Like chopping the chickens, cutting up the barbecue, right? So the technique is called lutang recta patapias. That's it. And then when we're learning the basics, it's X, aldabis, means you do an X step backwards with an upward diagonal strike. The footwork comes first. You have to move first or stay put, but you have to know why you're doing it. And so my method of teaching the Eskrima that came from training with all these masters was examine what they're doing, find out where the flaws, find out what's great, and take that through line up. And then the techniques that work and fit, keep, and the other ones are just one-off extras. Why train stuff that may only work part of the time?
That's a very good way of thinking. That's a very good way of thinking. Why train superfluous techniques?
Right. A lot of in Filipino martial arts, the main way of teaching back, turn of the century, or say the mid 20th century, 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, was by what they called muestracion, or demonstration. Okay, you strike me, I demonstrate. Okay, now you copy it. Okay, now you strike me somewhere else and I'll show you my technique. Now you copy it. Because they didn't have a system. They really didn't have a system yet until the Japanese came in after World War II, or the friendly, and they started karate and aikido and different arts where they learned, you can line people up and you can count out basics, and You can have line drills. And when that came into the Philippines, the Arnis, or the Filipino martial arts around Manila, started structuring their styles based on that and started adding rank. None of that was there before. You just practice, and they called it playing Arnis. You just play and practice, and you have to demonstrate. You have to mimic what the demonstration was and do it again until you get it. But there's not a lot of thinking. They're not really educated guys. Farmers. They were under colonial rule and kept down, and it's, here's this technique. If he strikes you like that, you can do this. But it's all these one-off, 1,000 one-off techniques. But you can't really. There's no system there, right? It's just a style of the teacher and a million techniques. And I still see today here in the U.S. and other places, and in the Philippines, and YouTube especially, where the teachers are just showing a million techniques. Oh, you can do this, you can do that, and you can do this. Oh, and it looks fantastic. Well, at a certain level, in any martial art, you should be able to improvise like a jazz musician, improvise 1,000 techniques against 1,000 attacks and counterattacks because you're inside the art. But to get a white belt to that level, it's really hard if they're just grabbing your improvisations and trying to duplicate them or replicate them. There has to be a sequence of learning, and that sequence has to make sense, right? There has to be a goal that you're trying to reach, and that goal just can't be just give them lots of stuff to stay interested. I mean, that's a good business model, but if we're talking martial art, we're talking something different. So.
Yes, definitely, definitely. So I do understand, and I get the naming of your system, integrated eskrima. Yes, I do completely understand it, and it's awesome how you model it off of how the of how eskrima Arnis got organized after the whole Japanese after the war, right? That makes absolute sense, right? So I'm glad that you explained all of that, and I'm absolutely incredibly honored to actually have. I had no idea that you had founded your own system, sir, and I'm honored to have a founder of a system on this podcast. So thank you very much for agreeing to come here, sir.
No worries.
This is absolutely great stuff. But I don't mean to change gears, Master Wiley. But I do want to ask you a question. How did you get to 5 ancestor fist?
I was going to say I forgot to answer that one because I got excited about eskrima.
No problem. It's okay. It's okay.
So here's what's interesting with the 5 ancestor fists. So in 1983, I saw an article in Inside Kung Fu magazine called White Crane Kung Fu or something like that, and it was by a teacher named Alex Ko. Now I didn't know anything about Alex Ko, but he's Chinese and he's doing Kung Fu in the pictures, and it's Inside Kung Fu magazine, and most of the writers and of the articles in Inside Kung Fu were either from the U.S. or Hong Kong. Very few were from mainland China, very few from Taiwan, et cetera, South America. They were residing here in the U.S. or came to teach a seminar, or they were some teachers from Hong Kong, et cetera. So I was like, that's a pretty cool art. Maybe one day. It's not around anywhere. I can't really find it. And now we jump ahead and to when? To like 1991 or something around there. And I met a gentleman named, now he's Grandmaster Reynaldo Galong. And Ray Galong, it was from the Philippines, moved to Australia, then moved to New Jersey. And he and I got connected. And we started talking about different styles. And he's with a grandmaster in the Philippines, who passed in the 90s, named Antonio Illustrissimo, who was the biggest influence on me of all the masters there. He is like, for me, the Jedi, like Yoda, and the other guys are Luke Skywalker. They're awesome, but this guy was just, there's something about him, But Ray was showing me videos of the Illustrissimo guys and this group called Bakbakan and their teachers and different masters in the Philippines I had never heard about. And I don't think anybody had heard about, really, because there had been some publications that said all the masters of the art left the Philippines and came to the United States. So the masters that we had in the United States, people like me who read that information for decades thought this is it, and all the arts had left the Philippines. It wasn't true. But so Ray was exposing me to these things, and one day he puts on a VHS tape, and there's Alex Ko, and he's doing some kung fu. And the guys in the Bakbakan group, and martial art group in the Philippines that do kickboxing and grappling, and like a modern MMA, but in the early 90s, they were training with him. And I was like, that looks like the guy from the article. And he said, yeah, that's him. And I was like, wow, you have footage of him. That's interesting. He said, yeah, we learned from him. And I thought, yeah, Philippines is not far from Hong Kong. I don't know anything, So Ray takes me, I go to the Philippines. I accompanied Ray on a trip there to meet all Ilustrísimo and all these other arnisadors. And Alex Ko walks in one night. And I was like, what? How come you're here? You're not in Hong Kong? And he's like, I live here. So he's a Chinese master who lives in the Philippines. And later I found out, I was still in my mid-20s, right? I was 24, maybe, 56 now. And he said, I later learned that Binondo, which is Chinatown in Manila, is the original first and oldest Chinatown in the world, where Chinese developed an actual Chinatown area. And it's over 300 years old back then. And they had kung fu there for a long time, and a lot of martial arts from mainland China after the Cultural Revolution escaped out to Southeast Asia, Philippines, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, even Taiwan, right? They had to escape persecution because they didn't want the government to. It was basically, we're going to kill you because we don't want you to have an uprising against us, like in the past, the Boxer Rebellion and the Hung Mun, the rebellions, etc. So his father had moved to the Philippines, so he's what they call a Chinoy, Chinese Pinoy is Filipino, Chinese Filipino, Pinoy. You're Chinese but raised in the Philippines, in Chinatown, And he learned from the master at the oldest kung fu school ever in the Philippines that was opened. And that opened in the late 1800s by his teacher's teacher, Tang Kyung Bang, who was the fifth disciple of the founder of Five Ancestor Fists, or Ngwal Chokun, Chwagyok Bang, who had 10 disciples, 5 early disciples, 5 later disciples. His master was the fifth. It doesn't mean like one is worse than 10, or they're just the order of when they went through the training. And he sent them out. You go to Singapore, you go to here, you go to the Philippines and spread the art. And that's how that art came in to the Philippines. And instead of just training in parks or back alleys, they opened a school to protect Chinatown against, bandits and rebellion and government and uprisings that came in. The Sino-Japanese War came in, and the Benkiam is the name of the club after founder Chwagyok Bang, means benevolent Bang. Their members fought as rebels against the Japanese who were coming in, and etc. And I was just so blessed that I was able to, because at that time Alex Ko had, 10 magazine articles, and he had 2 books out. It was the only material you could find on the art in the US at that time. And here he was standing with me in a room full of escrimadors.
That's so awesome. That's so
and
awesome.
I was like, what? And I had been studying for example, Wing Chun for 15 years already before I met him. Wing Chun Kung Fu. And I could never, to be totally honest with everybody, I could never master Chi Sao, which is their core training method. It has eluded me my entire life. I'm totally horrible at it, and I don't know why. It just, I have a collection of Wing Chun books, I think 120 books on Wing Chun, because for the last 40 some years, I've been trying to read and learn and master this Wing Chun thing, and I could never master it. It just doesn't work in my body for some reason. Everybody beats me in Chi Sao. But when I started learning Five Ancestor Fist, which does not have Chi Sao, it turned a whole way of applying the art around. But it's got some similar techniques because they both have White Crane as one of the parent arts. Wing Chun has White Crane and go five answers to fit. Also has white crane among four others. Um, and Alex Coe just showed me his first technique and just threw his arms out like this and made this in his t-shirt. Well, he had a collared shirt, but and made this loud poof noise in the room. And everybody stopped and looked, and he's like, "That's how you know you have the power, when the energy comes out of the joints and flies out of your body." I was like, "Man, sign me up!"
That's
And
awesome.
and that was it. I was sold.
Oh, that's awesome. That's the
Yeah,
first. I mean, the circumstance itself was absolutely awesome. Here you are visiting the Philippines. You're thinking, one, Alex Coe is in China or in Hong Kong,
yeah.
and you went to visit Philippines with a friend,
And
and
he just
then
walks in.
yeah, and then all of a sudden he walks in, and you're like, wow, wow, what is this? Okay,
Like,
circumstance was awesome, and then
yeah.
second, that you were able to, get to learn this art. So, speaking of the art of five ancestors fist. Sorry,
Yeah.
you had you had given us the information of how it got to the Philippines, right?
Hmm.
But I do have a question, right? An even more a burning question for you. What actually is the five ancestor fist?
Okay, so it is a Fujian Chinese style. Fujian is a region in China, southern China. So you have Canton and Fujian and Shanghai, and you know, and there's kind of like a division around uh, northern and southern Shaolin styles. Like in the north, it's they're kind of skinnier, maybe a little taller in their features. The Chinese population there, and they have longer styles like Northern Long Fist and Tai Chi and these different arts that you extend your arms, and they have lower and wider stances. And then the Southern Fist, most of them are farmers and fishermen, and they're stockier and shorter. And so their art is more hand centered, but it has not as many kicks, but it's got a good 10, 15 kicks, but they're all from the sternum down. They're not thrown at head level, because if I try and throw it head level to you, I'm just going to hit your chest anyway. So the style was made for more in close fighting, and one of the rules is never throw a kick unless you have a bridge, which means your hand's touching the other guy's hand, because then he can't see it coming. Or, if I throw it from way out here, unless I'm super fast, you can block it or move or grab it, you know, especially for short, stocky people like me. I'm 5'5", no big deal. So the kicks are that way. So, and it's made up of five styles, right? And those five styles are white crane, southern white crane, and monkey boxing, Damo boxing, or Bodhidharma. It's the iron body training. So the saying is like white crane fingers, which means the crane hands, right? And monkey palms for all the palming techniques, but it's also the monkey grabs. So all our hand locks and throws and our low ground dodging is all for monkey. And then the Bodhidharma or the Damo method is the meditation, the clearing of the mind, the iron body training and conditioning of the body, as well as the first form, San Chen, which karate's San Chin is a derivative of, which is a body training method. It's isometric and isotonic with specific breathing. So it's like the internal development of the art. And then we have Lohan boxing, which is a lot of footwork and stepping, the steps of the Lohan. Um, so yeah, so it's a composite of those. The founder grew up wealthy, and his family had a soy sauce business. And the wealthy families always had a kung fu master. I don't know, always. I'll say it was known that they had kung fu masters. They would pay them to come in and train their family and defend their business, but train the son of the family who was going to be taking over at some point. And Chua Gyuk Bang just loved training so much, he went out and learned a lot of styles, more than the five, that are mentioned. And he then later glommed on, was attracted to Chua Gyuk Bang of the Five Ancestors style, who took him in as a disciple, and through him, Chua Gyuk Bang founded the style after learning the styles of these different teachers, and he combined the elements. But even though it's made up of white crane and Lohan and Damo and monkey, it doesn't have the any forms from those styles, except for the Samchen from the Damo style. They call it Datsun Chuan, or Damo respecting boxing. He learned that one form and kept it, and all the rest he created. So even though there's influence from the crane, influence from the monkey, etc., there's nothing from those styles that was taken in whole. It was characteristics and style of movement. So he created something new. And in Fujian province, which has, I think, 38 styles, his style, the five ancestor fist, or Gocho Kun, in Mandarin they call it Wuzu Chuan. The five ancestor fist is the number one most popular and widely spread art of all the Fujian styles, of which there are many, several dozen, maybe 3 dozen. So he created this. He also was very educated. He was a scholar, and he passed the military exam to have rank in the military in the late 1800s. And to do that took a lot of studying and academic training. And he also learned bone setting, orthopedics, and Chinese medicine, herbals. So his first 5 disciples were also passed the military exam, also learned the medicine, also learned the herbals, and this was like a full system. You had to be and they wrote books. I think Tragyok Beng wrote like 6 or 7 books, but they were burned and bombed during the Japanese invasion. And but some of the material survived, and one of his disciples wrote a book, one of 3, and then the printing press got bombed, but they had a surviving copy, and it was held tightly within our art, called the Bible of Gocho, which had 38 forms, and it's got to be 40 exercises in there, etc. And finally, my Sifu Alex Ko, with my friend and student Russ Smith and we translated that book, and there were no photos, and we took all the photos with my Sifu in 2013, and we published that in the English-Chinese version. It's on Amazon, and called Chinese Gentle Art Complete, the Bible of Gocho Kun. And then my Sifu passed away in 2016, April 12th, 2016. So we just had the 9th year of his passing. But he was so free with me. He gave me and taught me everything. He gave me copies of books. He ran a martial arts supply store, and he was a crazy guy like me. Or me like him, because he was older than me. But I mean, he would go to Hong Kong, buy up all the Kung Fu books and videos, bring them to the Philippines, and then reprint them and sell them there. And he had this massive library, which after he passed, he willed that all to me. His uniforms, his entire library, and his wife packed up and sent me almost 900 books, his uniforms, clothing, all kinds of his personal items as his closest disciple. So I feel very honored for that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you very much for that answer. You have thoroughly answered that question on what five ancestor fist is. I'm not understanding what's going on with my speech right now. But yes, and it's so you definitely got to master level from Grandmaster Alex Cole.
Yeah.
Okay, that's absolutely awesome.
In 1998, that old school, Benkiam, the oldest club in the Philippines, created a banner, and they brought it over to me to open the American Association for Five Ancestor Fist. I'm only the second person within Benkiam to be given permission by the group to open a branch school. It was always just the one club, Benkiam. And then there was a gentleman, one of my other teachers, his name was Alfonso, is his American name, Ang Wakun. And he opened a school called Tsinghua Gocho Kung Fu Center in the, I'm forgetting when, 86 or something. And then maybe late 80s. But anyway, he was wrongfully imprisoned, and he would bodyguard people. When you have a Kung Fu school in the Philippines, I don't know how it is elsewhere, but the teacher and the school is sponsored by chairmen and presidents who don't do martial arts, but they're businessmen. So the local Chinese businessmen in Chinatown in the Philippines sponsored him in his school. All the students can come train for free. Nobody has any money there anyway, the kids and all, and the adults to train. But he would have to go around and collect the dues of what businesses and what shops owed money to those businessmen. And then they sponsored some guys in from China, and he was bodyguarding them, and they got some trumped up charges from one of the businesses that he beat up the guy to get their money, and they threw him in jail. And it took a couple of years to get him released from prison, and they admitted that he was wrongly arrested. But the night he was supposed to get let out the next morning, he died of a heart attack in the hospital from being so happy that he was going to be let free. Yeah, okay. I don't think so. Yeah, it's the corruption over there. So Wakun had a school, and then nobody else had one until 1998, when they presented me with the flag for an official branch to run the American branch. And that's been it, really. So I feel very honored for that. I'm trying to uphold the tradition here in the U.S. and from our international students as well.
Well, I'll tell you this much, right? I personally met your student Russ Smith. That's
Yeah.
actually how we got connected. I've spoken with him, and he is a great reflection on you. I would tell you that much,
Yeah.
right? So I do think that your master would be very, very proud of all the work that you have been doing to go ahead and keep on spreading Nocho all around. I hope I pronounced that properly.
Yeah. Yeah. Russ is a one of the best human beings I've met. You know, he's a sincere person. He doesn't lie. He doesn't cheat. He doesn't screw around. He doesn't mislead. And he's very dedicated to the art. And we're like brothers. You know, yeah. At times when I want to stop doing martial arts, he gets me on the phone, and then 10 minutes later, I'm like, why would I think not to do martial arts? You know, you get into these places in your head where you're like, oh, nobody cares, nobody trains, nobody wants this old stuff. Why am I just doing it? And then he'll call all excited about something, and then bring my excitement back up. So I'm very blessed to have him in my life, I guess I'll say.
That's very good. That's very good, my friend. That's very, very good. So, let's go ahead and switch gears again and go on to our next question,
Sure.
Master Mark Wiley. This could be a very, very, very interesting question. I'm very interested to hear your answer for this one. We know that Kung Fu is that term that can be used to signify hard work, or could you mean skill or skilled person. Um, what do you truly believe is the hardest part of developing Kung Fu?
That's a hard question, because I can probably rattle off 10 things, but I have to say that not losing focus of the path of mastery. People get into the arts for different reasons. You know, not everybody gets in to say, I want to be a kung fu master. I did. I mean, at 10 years old, I wanted to be a kung fu master and a natural healer and a writer. You know, all these different things. I knew. But a lot of people don't. They get into it. They want to try something out or whatever. So it's a hard thing to answer. But let's say I'm answering for serious people who get in when they're serious, or they get in and become serious about it. I think the hardest thing to develop it, if you're going to stay in the arts, is don't lose the plot. Like, don't lose your vision of the road to where you're going. Because if you forget where you're going, your training suffers and your skill drops, because you get caught in, well, I'm a black belt and I could beat this guy up, and I won this tournament, and I got into some Hall of Fame, or I got a recognition, or I was in the martial art magazine, or I have my own podcast. And these things and everyone's like, man, you're so great, and you're so cool, and you're so awesome. And that's building on the ego of accomplishment. But that ego builds, and I see so many people stop actually training, or they keep training the same thing and they don't go higher because they never looked higher, right? They're like, well, martial arts is punching and kicking and squatting and moving, and I learned all the forms, and people get stuck in the forms, like they're just, I'm a forms collector, and I do all these forms, and other people are like, well, I do all the sparring, and I forget the forms. Sparring is what you need. And the other people are like, well, here's the application of the forms, and I'm into the true application. Other people get into the history. Well, you know what? All of that's important. Every bit of that is important. If you exclude that stuff, and the research is important, you know, the and you have to. I'm so grateful that my Sifu gave me videos of him from the 70s, you know, through to when he passed away, and I could ask every question, and videos of his classmates and his teacher, and I took so many videos of all the Arnis masters I trained with, you know, and asked them questions and interviewed them because I wanted to get at what makes somebody a great. Like, why are you so good? It can't just be that you did your kata for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And it can't just be that you were the awesome sparring guy, because you're doing more than just sparring here. There's something else. And that's this internal body development. And you have to develop the body and for your art. Somebody does Tai Chi like yourself. There's a certain body, roll off, ward off, press, push, and you have to be relaxed. You have to be sung. You have to be sunk, and you have to, and your mind has to stay with the movement. You can't be ahead of the movement, right? And you can't be behind the movement. And the breath has to coordinate with the movement, right? I mean, there's so many things in Tai Chi to account for to be great at Tai Chi. And if all you do is learn the form and repeat it, you're not going to get it. You have to look at the masters. You have to read the texts. If you don't read the Tai Chi classics, you're never going to master Tai Chi. You're just going to be mimicking the movements, and then maybe you don't know the Chinese terms. Well, guess what? Well, now we have AI. You can type it in and find out what's this character mean, but we didn't have it before. You had to get dictionaries and look it up and go travel to meet teachers and ask them. It's a full life commitment. And I'm not saying I'm better than anybody, but I see a lot of, but I try hard, maybe harder than most people, but I'm not physically naturally talented, and I'm not naturally athletic. I work hard, and I still have a long way to go. But I see so many people who are athletic and who are physically talented in martial arts, any art, who get the skin and bones, but they don't get the bone marrow and the blood. They have the outer coating of the art, and they might be very dynamic and active with it, and can do all kinds of things. But if that's all you're going for, you're not mastering that. It's not true skill, right? It's a partial skill. It's the exterior skill. And for me, if you want to develop Kung Fu, not just perform Kung Fu or Arnis, then you have to dig into those things. I was watching a YouTube video of an Arnisador who has a YouTube channel that's very popular. And he was talking about how his mechanics of striking are just like a boxer's. When you swing to the left, your body arcs to the left. When you strike to the right, your body turns to the right. I'm like, that's only half of the equation. You didn't get the other half because you didn't study medicine, sports medicine, physiology, anatomy, or read books on it, or Google it, or look at videos on it, right? So, there's so much available on YouTube and Google, it's unbelievable today. And if you don't understand body mechanics, like you can just put in what's the physics of hip movement generally, and you learn how the hip swivels and move, and it ties to your torso, and it ties to your legs, and how the psoas muscle goes from your spine to the stomach into the hips, and how these things are coordinated. And even if you don't get all the details, you get the gist. And if you start playing with your punch or your movement, it's going to make you better because you'll understand the mechanic. So if you only turn one way when you strike and the hips don't snap back, you're not getting the reflexive hit. And every boxer who punches, you can see there's a snap in their shoulder and there's a whip in their waist. And martial artists need to have it too. But if you only see that he turned right when left when he punched left, that's only half of the equation. So if you're going to get good, you got to look at stuff outside the field. How does the body work? Look at biomechanics stuff. And it's so easy, and you don't have to get deep into it and scientific. Just watch a video on how the hips turn. There's so many. or how the arms move, and etc. So just keeping that focus and is important for true mastery, and not getting derailed or off on a sidetrack of look how good I am, and look what awards I win, and people say I'm great, and I already learned this art, so I don't need to keep training because I'm a black belt or a master in that art. Well, there's a lot of arts that can teach you a lot of things, So without five ancestor fists, my eskrima wouldn't be as good, because I learned how to strike hard using the body mechanics from five ancestor fist. I didn't take anything from five and like apply it to eskrima, but the body mechanic that was taught to me and that I developed through is so essential to how I generate power and speed and torque in eskrima that you don't see it in many other escrimadors. And the ability to flow with the Filipino arts into my kung fu made my kung fu better, because mainly they train in two-man prearranged sets, or line drills, and you have to break out of that. And I had that flow from the Filipino arts that carried over, not the techniques, but the concept of the flow, right? And so looking outside your art can improve your art without you having to change your art. Hey, that's a good quote. Man, I got to write that down.
Looking outside the art helps improve your art. Yes, it's very true. It's very true.
Without changing the art.
Quote.
Yeah.
Without changing the art. But also, what is a very good answer was the answer to that question. What is the hardest part of developing Kung Fu? And it's not losing path of your mastery. That is a great quote, and I could not answer that any better than that, sir. That's great. Thank you very much for that insight. So we go on to another question, right? Because you are a man who has been influenced by martial arts for many, many years. So here's my question to you. How has martial arts influenced your life on a whole?
Well, without it, I wouldn't have a vocation as an adult. Um, when I was 17, I don't remember, 17, 18, somewhere in there, 16, 17, maybe 17. My Eskrima teacher, Angel Cabalas, asked me to write a series of books for him on his art of Serrata Eskrima. I was getting C minuses in English class, and D's on, horrible. Like, how am I going to write anything? I didn't write anything in my entire life, and I'm still a kid, and he asked me to do it, and I don't know what to do. And I tried, I did some interviews with him and about his background, his history, and etc. And I don't know. I love martial art books, so I started looking at other martial arts books. I'm like, okay, table of contents. We need to do this. We need to do that. Okay, well, I don't know what to write or how to write it. So I wrote an article about him for Black Belt magazine, and the editor at the time, his name was Jim Coleman. He sent me back a letter, very short letter. He said, "I'm very interested to publish an article in Angel Cabalas, just not this article." Okay. So I was like, okay. So obviously I really don't. I knew I didn't know what I was doing, but obviously someone else telling you is pretty. So I was entering community college, and every time there was a break between classes, an hour, sometimes 2 hours between classes. And I went in the library and I read every book that they had, every single book that they had on writing, on editing, and on publishing, and on marketing of books. I read how do you write poetry? I still can't write poetry, but I read the book on how to write poetry, how to write prose, how to write essays, how to write novels, how to fiction, and then how to edit. And the edit, today, I cannot diagram a sentence in English. What's the noun, pronoun, this? I have no idea at all. But I've written 15 books, and I've edited 70 others, and over 1,000 magazine articles, and worked for a whole bunch of different publishers. But I still don't have that academic understanding of stuff, which is like, when you write, you understand the language and how the most important thing is to learn how to structure. You want to tell a story, even if it's about footwork, a chapter on footwork. You want to tell the story. You need the base of the ground. You have to stand in a way that makes you settled and on balance. And when you move, you have to remain on balance. And when you strike, you have to do this. And you're telling a story like a little narrative in each little section. And even when you have 5 different footwork techniques with pictures, you're showing all the descriptions should be like a little narrative. And that's how I learned to write, from reading these books on how to write essays and different things. And I rewrote the article and I sent it into Black Belt, and they published it in 1991, I think. And then they published another one either the same year or the next year. I forget when in the year it was. But now I had 2 articles on the art published. So I took those 2 articles and made a table of contents for the book, and I sent it out to 15 publishers. And everyone said no. And I wasn't ready yet. And one of them sent me a postcard back, and they said, it was North Atlantic Books, and they sent me a postcard back and said, "No offense, Mr. Wiley, but you're no writer." Whew. Man, I'm trying, I mean, most people would quit. And then I sent it out to this publisher, all martial art publishers. This one. No. And I kept studying for those 2 years in community college on how to write, how to edit. And I kept redoing it. And then Tuttle Publishing, which at the time was called the Charles E. Tuttle Publishing Company in Tokyo, they were the first and biggest publisher of books on the East, books on Asia for a Western audience, founded right after World War II by a serviceman who married a Japanese woman, Charles Tuttle. And their books were amazing. They're the best martial art books. And they said, yes, we'll take it. Holy cow. And that book became a fast seller for them. As the author, we don't make any money, but they sold through, I think, 2 print runs within the first year. And I was during that time for the book came out in 1994. It was finished in 93. Angel Caballas read it. He wrote a foreword for it, had his students type it up, and then he signed the type one and mailed it to me. I still have the envelope with the stamp and his signature and the handwritten and all this stuff. And I was so proud, like, wow, an actual book by the best of all the publishers that I sent it to. Like, this is crazy. And then I started making all those trips to the Philippines, and I wrote a bigger book that was like 300 pages about all these masters and the style, because I had finished community college and regular college at that time. And the publisher said, "Hey, our editor's leaving. He's going into law school. Would you like to come and be our new martial art book editor?" What? Whew! I moved to Tokyo, man, right out of college. And I started being their editor, receiving and reading martial art books and editing and taking out of print ones back into print. And that's Angel Caballas asking me to do that. Something I would have never thought in my life launched me into my career till today, is writing and editing and publishing and around martial arts mostly. And then I learned Chinese medicine, did a doctoral program in Chinese medicine and healthcare management and these different things, because I want to be the martial artist and the healer, the warrior, healer, scholar. So all 3 things, and bring them all together. And it's all because of Angel Caballas asking me to do that. And the saddest part is he passed away, I think, 3 months before the book was actually released. And when it came out, his whole group was like, "Mark Wiley just published this book so he could be the grandmaster of the style. And we were here 10, 15, 20 years before him." And then it was nothing but hate mail from then till today from most of those guys. And so I was real happy to leave that group and join other Filipino groups, because who wants all the hate from the guys who could have been writing these things all along? Why didn't you guys write a book? And from till today, you're complaining. The book is now 30 years old. 30 years old. And you haven't written one. 3 other ones came out on his style. Nobody says anything. I don't know that they reached a wide audience or not, but everybody's still pounding on me about it. And it's like that book put that art on the map. Put it on the map. And all those guys owe me a debt of gratitude. But, But anyway.
They're not looking at it that way. They're looking at it. They're looking at it from a completely different perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of looking at it, as you say, looking at the book as a a springboard for the art. You know, they're
Right.
looking at it with their personal with their personal views on it, and like, oh, you know, I could have done that. Well, if you, why didn't you? I get your point.
Right.
I
It's
get your
been
point.
30 years. That's a lot of time. You could write one paragraph a month and get, 5 books done in 30 years.
True, you
You
know,
could get
true.
someone to help you do it, right? Or
You know, at
whatever.
the beginning, when I asked you that question, how has martial arts influenced your life? You had literally said that the first thing that came out your mouth, Master Mark, was that you wouldn't have a vocation. And
Yeah.
by now, after your explanation and answering that question, I completely understand that. It
Yeah.
is so true. When you say that if it weren't for Angel Serrana asking you to write that book, none of anything in your life right now would have happened.
And if I hadn't taken it seriously and taken it upon, when I was in community college, I was studying small business administration and management because I didn't want to go to college after high school. I wanted to open up a martial arts school. And I figured I don't know how to run a martial arts school. So I'm going to go take a 2-year degree. My parents were, my mom was a psychologist. My father was a physician. They were like, you're going to college. All right. I'm going to sneak out on 2 years. Right. And then I'm going to run my own business. I was entrepreneurial and I was like, I'm going to learn how to run. I'm not just going to open a school at the YMCA, some classes. I'm going to open up a real martial arts school. But before I do, I'm going to learn how to run the business. So I'm going to take this 2-year degree and do it. And then I opened a school and I failed miserably at it. And then it closed and I taught at an ambulance, where the ambulance and fire trucks are, use their space. And I taught at another place and started in somebody's backyard. And then I opened another school, failed again within 7 months to a year. All that theoretical, technical stuff that I learned in the school, in class, in college, I wasn't able to apply it because for some reason I just couldn't. I was making flyers and doing promotions and people would come in, but I didn't know, like, it's a full-time business. It's like 70% business and 30% martial arts. And I wanted to be 80% martial arts and 20% business. And I'm more creative than I am business completely. So I shouldn't be running a publishing company or somebody's business, but have me develop the books or the products. Sure. But I didn't learn that till my mid 40s. It was kind of late. I wasted a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort, but never stopped trying. I mean, my mother never told me I could achieve anything. When my book came out, she said, "Oh, that's great. Was it Simon and Schuster or Random House? These big publishers." I'm like, no, you know. And then I think 96 or 95 or 6, I was on the cover of a magazine for martial arts. I was in 3 in a row in 3 years. And I show her the magazine covers and she's like, "Oh, what about Time Magazine or Sports Illustrated?" Yeah, what about them? Like, okay. Well, that to me, my mom saying that was just like that publisher telling me, "You're no writer, Mr. Wiley. And I'm just going to go out and do better. And martial arts taught me never to stop. Like, I couldn't do a spinning hook kick in Taekwondo. I have really tight hips. And the Korean instructor, Byung Yo Kwak in Pennsylvania, he's like, "Get near the wall, do it, and don't kick the wall." And I kept kicking his wall, and he was getting mad and hit me with the bamboo. "Do it again, do it." And I would just keep practicing it because the master said to do it. So when Master Kabbalah said, "You're going to write this book," or "I want you to write this book," I took it as my personal mission to learn how to do it. And even though I got rejected for the first article and the second article, and then it got picked up and the book got rejected 15 times, people would say, like, I quit. Hey, man, I tried. But no, you can't give up. Just like what is, hardest part of developing martial arts is giving up, right? You just keep going forward because you want to win, you want to achieve. And I haven't made hardly any money on my martial art books, but it didn't matter to me. My success is that I was able to do it, and I was able to bring out, you know, 15 really good books that elevated what other martial art books had done, for what they were. And for me, that's the success. And my life has been the same way all the way, all the way till now. I just keep pushing and trying, and I fail so many times a year, you know. Um, But so what?
True, true, true. If you fail, keep on going. Just keep on at it. Keep on at it. I get it. I understand that, and I agree with that outlook as well, Master. So I have another question for you, which is actually we're actually getting up into our last two questions, right? So
Okay.
this one is actually a little bit more how should I say, a little bit more heavy than the others. I believe, right? Because this one really gets into the mind now. So, Master Wiley, if you could teach the new generation of martial artists only one thing, it could be technique, it could be philosophy, it could be a combination of the two, what would it be?
Yeah. Well, it's good we didn't start out with this one. You had to warm up my brain cells. Um, I think the most. Let me think if I think that's true. Hold on. Yeah. I think the most important thing in martial arts that we can learn is through the trials of learning. You know, the successes of going through rank and the failures of failing rank, of losing a tournament, of not being able to get a form right or technique good or etc. is hopefully you learn to become grounded in who you are. You know, who is Mark Wiley? What are his limitations? How can I turn some of those limitations into excellences that are able to? Not every limitation, can turn into an excellence. We're not all geniuses in everything. I don't believe we all have the capacity to become experts in everything, no matter how much hard work. And my life proves that out. But through the martial arts, I've come to learn my weaknesses. Strengths are easy to count, right? Everybody knows their strengths. But if you know where your weaknesses are and you can try and develop them, and it could be a mental weakness, not doesn't have to be physical. Like I don't know how to say no to somebody, or when I'm depressed, I eat 12 donuts, or I drink a 6 pack of beer, or when I have anxiety, I smoke. These are weaknesses, or I procrastinate, right, on doing work I should be doing it, right? Those are weaknesses. Um, but also weaknesses in the art could be like, I'm not good at that form or doing these techniques. So I'm just not going to train them. It's funner to do the ones that I'm really good at. Knowing who you are by those strengths and weaknesses will help you in your entire life. So I would try and instill that, I think, if I had a new group of students in who wanted to learn something in a short amount of time, I said, no matter what we're doing here, I want you to think about how to know who you are, because that's going to help you make your decisions for your life partner, husband, wife, for your job, who are your business partners if you're doing business, what kind of training you want to do. Do you want to be 50 and enter BJJ and MMA tournaments? Okay. If that's who you are, go for it. Other people, they don't want to get hit like that. So don't do it because you want to be a tough guy or your friends are doing it. Like if you're going to do it, know you're doing it for the reasons for you, right? And that's for everything: who you're dating, where you're eating, do you drink or not drink, smoke, don't smoke, drugs, no drugs. And I'm not judging any of that. Everybody's got their own life, and I don't think any of it's right or wrong. Everybody's got their own path, religion or not religion, all the same kind of stuff, beliefs and not beliefs. But if you can come to know who you are, martial arts training really helps with that. If the teacher can help you focus on that, you know, don't just always play towards your strengths. And I learned that, and this is, I learned that from, we get in, we, people cross our lives at different times for different reasons. And I was taking the train from Haddon Heights, New Jersey into Philadelphia, a little path train. It's like a half hour little thing, probably in the 1991 or 92. And I was sitting in the train, and this African American kid was sitting across from me, and he had a backpack. And I think it must have been 92 because I just finished my associate's degree in community college. And I'm like, yeah, I got my degree, and I'm heading into Chinatown because I'll let you off a couple blocks from Chinatown. And this kid was there, and he was going on and on. And he started, and I was like, "Oh, what are you reading?" He's like, "I'm reading whatever it was." And he says, "I'm really horrible at this. It's my weakness. But damn it, I'm going to make my weakness my strength. And you're going to see." And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm really bad at this, but I decided I'm going to make it my strength, and it's going to be what I'm the best at." And that little 15-minute conversation never left me ever. I don't know who he is, where he is. I can only say thank you spiritually to him, but it sat with me all these years. Like, wow, make your strength your weakness. And then I realized you can't make every strength your weakness. I love jazz, and I played classical piano as a kid. My mom made me, from age like 6 till 13. And then I quit because I could play some songs, and I was in a band in middle school, and then like a couple of years later, I could hardly read music anymore, and I couldn't play the songs I could play before. And then 15 years later, I was like, I'm going to start studying jazz piano. I practiced 2 hours a day for 4 months, and I couldn't get it. And I was just like, well, no matter how much, this is about knowing who you are. Like, no matter how much I put into that, like how much I put into business school, I just didn't have it. No matter how much I wanted it, you can't excel at everything. So once I realized, like, okay, I put in 2 hours every single day out of the passion for this, and 6 months later, I just don't have it. Like, I can memorize what I just learned, but I don't know what it means. It just like didn't sink in. But I had the passion for it. So I realized, we're not all meant to be, no matter how much passion and strive you have, not everybody can be everything. So you have to know yourself. And that's, I guess, what I would try and teach, is to know yourself.
Absolutely perfect answer, if I do believe. If I say so myself, right? If you could teach the new generation, what would it be? It would be literally learn yourself through the martial arts. That learn your weaknesses. And it's through those weaknesses that you actually do learn yourself. And from knowing your weaknesses, you can better them. I do like it. I do subscribe to it
You know
completely.
what? You're so much better because it took me 15 minutes to say what you said in 32 seconds. I'm long-winded, man. I'm trying to figure it out on the spot, but you're just like, sum it up. Here it is. You know,
uh, no,
that's awesome.
it's kind of like what I do, though, right? So I'm it's kind of like literally what I have to do. I kind of have to summarize what you
Yeah.
say, um, but I can't say it any better than the way how you say it, right? I might come up with the short little snaps right there, but I can't say what you say. I don't
Yeah,
have
but
the
they can
experience.
put yours in a card and on a bumper sticker. They can't put mine. Yeah, that'd be a fold-out card.
I hear you. I get what you say, Master Wiley. I do get what you say. All right, so that is a perfect segue to
All right.
go into our last question. How can you be contacted?
I'm a ninja, man. You gotta have sharp eyes. I yeah, I'm easy to get in touch with. Okay, so I have a podcast on YouTube. Well, the Mark V Wiley channel on YouTube. V is my middle name, Vincent. That's an easy way to get in contact with me. Facebook, it's under my name, Mark Wiley. I'm there on Facebook. And Instagram is under my company name, Tambuli Media. T like Tom, AMBULI Media. And you can email me, my first two initials, MV Wiley, WILEY, at gmail.com. And if someone's serious and about something and they want to talk, I'm happy to call somebody or to have them call me at any time. I get a lot of junk mail from people just, hey man, send me this form. Oh, hey bro, what's up? I saw this book. Why don't you write a book on that? And it's like, well, I already did 8 years ago. Here's the Amazon link. You get a lot of like people, they just want to know everything, but they don't want to actually do any research to see if something is available or, you know, and so, but I'm very open and happy to talk to people and to connect with people, especially people who are sincere about their training. Absolutely.
All right, all right, all right. Great answers as always, Master Wiley. Thank you very much. contact information will be in description down below. Also, in the description down below will be links for his books. All right, so go ahead and get Master Wiley's books so you can educate yourself on Filipino martial arts, on Yin Chokun as well. Also, in the description will be a link for Feiyue shoes. If you need Feiyue shoes, go ahead and click the link down below, get the best prices, get the best links, all at Feiyue shoes. Master Mark Wiley, thank you very
So,
much,
Mark
sir.
Wynter, thank you.
Thank you for the time that you've taken to educate me on Unchu Kyun and Kali and Arnis as well, sir. It has been nothing but stellar, and I feel educated right now, sir. Thank you very much.
I feel hungry. You said you're from Jamaica, and I'm thinking beans and rice and all kinds of fun things.
Don't forget the jerk chicken.
Jerk chicken, oxtail stew. And I'm just like, where can I get it right now? It's too far away. I got to go 40 minutes. I got to go 40 minutes. You could just mail me some.
I wish it could be that way, because right now you're making me hungry, and I was even thinking about that. Oh man! Well, thank you very much for that time.
Thank you so much, Sipo. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.